Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. It's the 2nd of December. And in today's news, thousands of homes in Falkirk in central Scotland are facing several days without gas in cold weather after the supplies were turned off over safety concerns. The gas company, Scottish Gas Networks, said on Monday morning that it had turned off the gas to more than 3,000 homes since Sunday and would be going door to door to reach thousands more on Monday. Extra engineers have been drafted in from across Scotland to try and reach as many homes as possible. Temperatures in central Scotland were close to freezing overnight and around 4 Celsius on Monday morning. One local resident, David McCallan, told BBC Scotland today that his home was like an icebox when he woke up on Monday morning until he switched on a heater supplied by Scottish Gas Networks. It's not a great heat, he said, but it's sufficient to keep myself and my wife warm enough. Scottish Gas Networks has set up an information centre in a local community centre and promised that it would supply electric hot plates and heaters for residents with young children, a disability, a long-term mental or physical condition, or who are a bit older and live with someone who or live with somebody who is. The problem began on Sunday morning when residents reported problems with their gas supplies. The company later said that it had established that about 8,000 homes across the area were without gas after a fault at the main gas governor. The governor is a piece of equipment that regulates the pressure in the gas network, ensuring gas reaches homes at the correct pressure. Visits by engineers started again on Monday morning, but SNG warned that in the worst-case scenario, it might take several days to reconnect supplies to all affected homes. Several schools will be closed while the problem is investigated. SGN said homes in Bainsford, Carnshaw, Larbert, Langleys, New Carron Village, Skinflats and Stenhousemuir were all affected. The local police said on Twitter, Scottish Power is asking people in the Falkirk area to be as mindful of their electricity use over the coming days as there's increased demand on the electricity network with people using heaters while they're without gas. In a statement, SNG said, by the end of last night, our engineers had turned off the gas supplies to more than 3,000 homes across Bainsford, Carnshaw, Larbert, Langleys, New Carron Village, Skinflats and Stenhousemuir areas of Falkirk. It is likely that it will be several more days until everyone's gas supplies are fully restored. In the meantime, we're continuing to work closely with Falkirk Council and Police Scotland, as well as other local organisations to support the community, prioritising those who are vulnerable to make sure that they are looked after while they're without gas. And now to trade talks with the United States. Jeremy Corbyn has urged the Prime Minister to break off trade talks with Donald Trump until any reference of pharmaceuticals is struck out of Washington's negotiating objectives. As the US President prepared to fly in on Monday evening to attend the NATO summit alongside other world leaders, Corbyn wrote to Boris Johnson to urge him to give fresh reassurances about NHS privatisation. The Labour leader has repeatedly accused the Prime Minister of preparing to sell off the NHS, and Labour activists at recent rallies have taken up a chorus of not for sale, not for sale. Johnson has described Labour's claims as total nonsense. But in the letter sent on Monday, Corbyn called on him to take a series of concrete steps to show he is serious. These include bringing all services back in-house, repealing the Health and Social Care Act, and suspending trade talks until Washington changes its negotiating objectives. Mr Corbyn says that Johnson should decline to press ahead with talks on a bilateral trade deal unless Trump excludes any reference to pharmaceuticals from the US negotiating plans and to accept the role of the regulator, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, NICE, in setting drugs prices. Washington's negotiating objectives, a public document, include a demand that state-owned enterprises should accord with non-discriminatory treatment with respect to the purchase and sale of goods and services. It also calls for full market access for US products for what it calls government regulatory reimbursement regimes for pharmaceuticals and medical devices. Trump's public appearances during his visit will be scrutinised closely for any comments about a future trade deal. When he and Johnson met at Biarritz's G7 meeting in August, the US president lavished praise on Johnson, saying, "I've been saying for a long time he's the right man for the job." He had also criticised Corbyn in the past. Labour hopes switching the debate back to the NHS will help it to persuade traditional supporters to stick with the party. The Unite General Secretary Len McCluskey acknowledged in an interview with HuffPost on Monday that Labour-held seats across the Midlands and the North were the party's Achilles heel at this general election. "Our Achilles heel is in our communities, in what's known as our heartlands that voted Leave and are not quite sure yet whether they will give their vote to Labour," he said. "If we can engage people listening to what's on offer, what type of Britain and country we want as we go into the future, then we're on a winner. It's very much a question of how we do that, whilst at the same time tackling the very real issues that we've got over Brexit and with Jeremy in some places." Some Labour candidates fear the party's blizzard of generous spending pledges, the most recent being 30% cuts in rail season ticket prices, are raising questions among some voters about whether they could be delivered. At a press conference last week, Corbyn produced 451 pages of uncensored documents, which showed that between July 2017 and July 2019, senior UK and US trade officials discussed the NHS, drug patents, the pharmaceutical industry, health insurance, medical devices, all as part of a post-Brexit trade deal. Experts have warned that the documents show that the US wants the UK to rip up, to rip up the way it sets drug prices, potentially leading to billions of pounds a year in added costs for the NHS. Meantime, the SNP have branded the Scottish Tories spineless after their interim leader repeatedly refused to rule out plans to leave the EU without a deal at the end of next year, and said that he would now back Brexit, falling into line with Boris Johnson instead of standing up for the people in Scotland. In an interview with BBC Good Morning Scotland, Jackson Carlaw repeatedly refused to say that the Scottish Tories would not support a no-deal Brexit at the end of the transition period, which threatens to cause a recession, destroy 100,000 Scottish jobs and cost every person in the country £2,300 per year. Despite previously saying that the party won't support a no-deal Brexit, the Scottish Tories have U-turned once again on previous commitments. Mr Carlaw also admitted that he is now a fully signed up Brexiteer and would not campaign for Remain in another EU referendum, saying, "I would campaign to leave." The SNP's Europe spokesperson, Stephen Gethins, has said, "A vote for the SNP is a vote to lock Boris Johnson out of Downing Street and to provide an escape route from the catastrophic no-deal Brexit, which the Tories have repeatedly refused to rule out." It's time for Jackson Carlaw's spineless Tories to find a backbone and join the SNP in meaningfully opposing Boris Johnson's disastrous Brexit plans, instead of always rolling over. The Scottish Tories must give a cast-iron guarantee that they will vote against a catastrophic no-deal Brexit, which threatens jobs, threatens recession, and will cost every person in the country £2,300 a year. If not, it's clear that they are still taking their orders from Westminster and lining up behind Boris Johnson. The people of Scotland will see through Jackson Carlaw's feeble and cowardly attempts to justify a completely undemocratic action for his boss. Only a vote for the SNP on December the 12th will allow us to escape Brexit, lock Boris Johnson out of Downing Street and put Scotland's future into Scotland's hands, not Westminster's. And now to Nicola Sturgeon. The SNP leader and Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, today offered Scotland's experience to the rest of the UK as it wrestles with the cost of social care. With parties in England unable to agree to work together or to offer worked-out plans, the First Minister and the SNP leader said that while the system in Scotland can always be improved, the SNP could help Westminster parties to work through the social care crisis in England. Speaking after last night's TV debate, where UK parties failed to get to grips with the issue, Nicola Sturgeon said, "Scotland's unique system is one that all parties support, and that we know works. Free personal care for the elderly was introduced in 2002, against the wishes of Westminster parties, who used it to cut social security funding to older people in Scotland. Now we have extended that free personal care to all those under 65 who need it. And from the next Parliament, we will work to abolish social care charges. While there are still residential costs for some of those who require residential care, the level at which individuals have to make payments is higher than in England. And the cap is lower, meaning that older people are less likely to be hit with bills that they can't afford, and no one needs to sell their home up front. In addition, all staff are paid at least the real living wage. And while we can always do better, and we continually work to improve the system and the care that people receive, the SNP at Westminster can help other parties to see the sensible solution that already exists. A strong group of SNP MPs at Westminster can mean an escape from Brexit and a choice over Scotland's future. But we will always be best friends and allies with the rest of the UK, and this is one way in which our experiences can help to improve things for other parts of the UK. And now to the UN. The UN chief has opened a climate summit with a call for hope over surrender. The world must choose hope over surrender in the fight against climate change, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on Monday, warning a summit in Madrid that governments risk sleepwalking past a point of no return. 2 weeks of talks aimed at bolstering the 2015 Paris Agreement to curb global warming began against a backdrop of unusually severe weather disasters this year, from fires in the Arctic, Amazon and Australia to intense tropical hurricanes. Guterres, the former Portuguese Prime Minister and a leading advocate of more ambitious action to reverse the upward march of greenhouse gas emissions, urged governments to avoid the path of surrender that would endanger the health and safety of all. Do we really want to be remembered as the generation that buried its head in the sand and that fiddled while the planet burned? Guterres told an opening session at the summit, held in a hangar-like conference centre. He urged delegates to resolve an important outstanding issue from the Paris Accord, rules on carbon trading, seen as vital for kick-starting faster action to reduce emissions. Michał Kurtyka, Poland's climate minister, who led the last round of UN climate negotiations in the Polish city of Katowice in December last year, had earlier said that a surge in youth-led climate activism underscored the urgency of the task. They have the courage to speak up and remind us that we inherited this planet from our parents, said Kurtyka. Existing pledges made under the Paris Accord fall far short of the kind of transformational action needed to avert the most disastrous consequences of global warming in terms of sea level rise, drought, storms and other impacts, scientists say. Delegates are hoping to use the summit to inject fresh momentum into the process, which faces a moment of truth next year when governments are due to unveil more ambitious proposals to cut the production of planet-warming gases. The task is strengthened by the Paris Agreement. The task of strengthening the Paris Agreement has been complicated by a move by the administration of the United States President Donald Trump to begin formally withdrawing from the deal. Spain's acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, whose government stepped in to host the summit after unrest erupted in Chile, the original venue, urged delegates to be bold. No one can independently pull out of this challenge, Sanchez told delegates. There is no wall high enough to protect any country from this challenge, however powerful they are. And now to the United States. US Democrats are setting the stage for Donald Trump's impeachment with a key hearing. Democratic lawmakers in Congress will take a step this week in what appears to be a now inexorable march towards impeaching the US President Donald Trump, with the start of hearings seen as a precursor to formal charges being announced within weeks. As opinion polls show Americans bitterly divided over whether to impeach Trump, the Judiciary Committee in the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives will hold a hearing on Wednesday to explain to the public what constitutes an impeachable offence. It will also receive a report from the House Intelligence Committee laying out the evidence Democrats say shows that Trump abused his office for personal political gain. Democrats have been looking into the Republican president's efforts to pressure Ukraine to investigate political rival Joe Biden, a former Democratic vice president, who is seeking his party's nomination to face Trump in the 2020 presidential election, and his son Hunter Biden, who was a board member of a Ukrainian energy company. The impeachment inquiry has heard testimony from current and former officials that military aid was withheld from the Ukraine, and that a White House meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was conditional on investigations into the Bidens and a debunked conspiracy theory about interference in the 2016 US election being carried out. Trump has denied any wrongdoing and says a July 25th phone call with Zelensky in which he pressed for more probes was perfect. And he and fellow Republicans say that Democrats are seeking to overturn the will of the people in the 2016 presidential election. The Judiciary Panel will hear public testimony from 4 legal scholars on what a constitutional basis would be for a US president to be removed from office. In a defiant response on Sunday night, the White House informed Democrats that Trump and his lawyers would not participate in Wednesday's hearing, citing a lack of fundamental fairness. Speaking to reporters as he departed the White House on Monday en route to London for a NATO summit, Mr. Trump said that he had declined to participate in the hearing because it was a hoax. The proceedings would have been the first direct involvement by the Trump camp in the process. But White House counsel Pat Cipollone has not ruled out taking part in future proceedings if Democrats addressed a list of procedural complaints. The committee, which is not expected to consider evidence against Trump until next week, has given the president until 5 p.m. on Friday to say whether he plans to mount a defense by calling witnesses and introducing evidence. The Republican-controlled Senate, where any impeachment trial would be held, is highly unlikely to vote to oust Trump. Few Senate Republicans have shown an appetite for removing the president. But the impeachment inquiry has cast a shadow over Trump's already tumultuous presidency and sharpened a divide among Americans that is likely to intensify as the election campaigning heats up in the coming weeks. We're on an exercise with a very predictable outcome, and one that's going to divide the country further. It'll be a live issue throughout the election itself, and the American people will make the final determination, Republican Representative Tom Cole told Reuters. Wednesday's hearing, while academic in nature, will set the stage for the Judiciary Committee to begin determining whether Trump should face formal articles of impeachment. The House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, said in a letter to supporters last week that Trump had committed bribery and needed to be held accountable. Impeachment is the people's last line of self-defense against a president who insists upon acting like a king and trampling on the rule of law, said Representative Jamie Raskin, a Democrat on the Judiciary Committee. We've had an intensive focus over the last several weeks on facts, Raskin said in an interview. We're now about to revisit the basic values and structures of the American Constitution. Democratic aides said a vote on the possible articles of impeachment would follow quickly on the heels of an evidentiary hearing. Now, this week, Google and YouTube are reported to have pulled hundreds of Trump ads for violating policies. Google and YouTube have pulled hundreds of ads for Donald Trump over the last few months, according to 60 Minutes on CBS. A review of the tech company's advertising archive found at least 300 Trump ads had been pulled from the platforms, mainly over the summer, after they had been found to violate advertising policies. In an interview with 60 Minutes, YouTube Chief Executive Officer Susan Wojcicki, I hope I pronounced that right, confirmed that there were ads of President Trump that were not approved to run on Google or YouTube. Facebook, Google, YouTube and Twitter have faced scrutiny over political adverts. In October, Twitter announced it was banning political advertising on its platform. Wojcicki has also asked about a Trump ad that falsely accuses former Vice President and Democratic hopeful Joe Biden of offering military aid to the Ukraine in exchange for the firing of a prosecutor investigating a company tied to his son Hunter. Mr. Biden's campaign asked Facebook to remove the ad earlier this year. Facebook denied the request, arguing its decision was grounded in Facebook's fundamental belief in free expression, respect for the democratic process. Wojcicki told 60 Minutes that the ad appeared on YouTube and was not in violation of the company's policies. Can a politician lie on YouTube? 60 Minutes presenter Leslie Stahl asked. For every single video, I think it's really important to look at it, Wojcicki said. Politicians are always accusing their opponents of lying. And that said, it's not okay to have technically manipulated content that would be misleading. And now to news closer to home. Ferguson Marine are now about to enter public ownership. The Scottish Government, beg your pardon, just an update there, they have now entered public ownership. The Scottish Government has taken the Ferguson Marine shipyard into public ownership. Administrators have now agreed the final terms of the transaction with Scottish ministers. This follows the conclusion by administrators of 3 indicative commercial offers for the business, were either not capable of being executed or did not represent a better outcome for the creditors than a sale to the Scottish Government. Employees at the Inverclyde Yard have been informed of the latest position. The Economy Secretary, Derek Mackay, has said, "We have been working for over 2 years to find a resolution to the difficulties at Ferguson Marine, and our priorities remain the completion of the 2 CalMac ferries, protecting jobs and securing a future for the yard." In the absence of a workable commercial solution, the administrators concluded that public ownership is in the best interests of the creditors. Now that this has been confirmed, I'm determined that we continue to work closely with everyone at the yard to progress work on the vessels and to achieve the best possible outcome for the yard and its employees. Recruiting more staff to Ferguson Marine is a significant step forward in making this happen. Establishing a revised timetable for the completion of the 2 ferries also remains one of the main tasks for the management of the yard. And I will give an update on the schedule and the cost of delivery of the 2 ferries as soon as possible. While there is still more to be done, our actions have ensured that there will be a future for Ferguson Marine. The new name of the business will apparently be Ferguson Marine Port Glasgow Limited, which had been chosen for its heritage and its historic link to the first name when the company was established in 1903, which was known then as Ferguson Brothers Port Glasgow Limited. And now to council tax. Scotland's chief statistician has released the latest council tax reduction statistics. In September 2019, Scotland's CTR scheme was supported 471,790 households, and a total weekly income foregone by local authorities was £6.57 million. The total number of CTR recipients in September 2019 was 14.6% less, or 80,590 recipients, than it was at the beginning of the scheme in April 2013. Generally, the decline in the number of recipients has been gradual over this period. However, increases and reform to council tax and CTR in April 2017 and further increases in council tax in April 2018 and April 2019 has resulted in additional increases in the income foregone. The agreement between the Scottish Government and local government for locally determined council tax increases to be capped at 4.79% in the year 2019 to 20 reflects the increase in weekly income foregone since April 2019. The full statistical publication of the council tax reduction in Scotland July to September 2019 contains figures for CTR recipients and income foregone by local authorities. The latest publication and other information on CTR and statistics each month since April are available from the Scottish Government website. Tables showing CTR recipients and income foregone for each local authority will be published each quarter in 2019 and 2020. An additional compendium publication will be published in June 2020, covering the period from April this year, 2019, to March 2020, and will include detailed information on recipients and their characteristics. And that is about it from us this evening. But just remains for me to remind you again that Broadcasting Scotland is in the middle of a crowdfunding exercise at the moment. We're planning to expand the range and size of our programming, and we need your help to do that. So details on how to become a supporter of Broadcasting Scotland are on your screens now, and we urge you to help us hit our target. We need £30,000 a year in order to run the television station. It's all built, it's all finished, but these are our running costs. And if you can help us with these running costs, we can guarantee the future of the station. So if you can afford to at this time of year, we gladly receive any donations that you can afford. And I say our target at the moment is to raise £20,000 through this initial crowdfunder. So if you want to donate to Broadcasting Scotland, please follow the instructions on your screen now and go to broadcastingscotland.scot/donate. That's it from me this evening, Scotland at 7, and from all of us here at Broadcasting Scotland. Very good night to you.
The work that's been done by Broadcasting Scotland in giving community activists, Yes activists, Scottish activists a platform other than the traditional media outlets.